What's up and welcome back to my channel. It's JVceo. If you're tuning in for the first time, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, like, comment and subscribe. Alright? Anyway, today's video, I'm going to talk about HMOs, serviced accommodation, single lets and flips, because I get that a lot, especially people trying to get into the property market. They're always like, oh, what should I do? What should I buy? Is there a right answer? Is there a wrong answer? So we're going to go into it, and I'm just going to, off the dome, just tell you, right, how to navigate the property market, industry, purchase, whatever you want to call it. So that's that. I think for me, before you even get into what should I do as a purchase, I think there's a couple of things to bear in mind. Number one being your experience. Number two, I would say being your goal. And number three, I would say being your life circumstance. So let's go from experience. How experienced are you? If you're not that experienced, you might want to start with the sort of basic things and then, you know, go on to what people would call more creative. Excuse me. So that's that. Then you got your life circumstances, which, in a sense, that just that sort of throws the bone to where you currently are in life. So, how much time do you have? Are you working a full-time job? Do you want property to like take over your earned income, and like, you know, like you want property to be that for you, and that kind of links in with the final part, that being your overall goal. So your overall goal, maybe more monetary than anything, but how much you want to make. You know, do you want to make £10,000 of properties in, let's say, 3 years, as opposed to £10,000 in 10 years, like £10,000 a month, monthly income? Do you want to do it in 3 years as opposed to 10 years, and that sort of stuff. And also life, but moving back a bit to life circumstances also is, let's say you've got a family and you're choosing to self-manage. You know, if you're choosing to self-manage because maybe you don't want to go more than an hour away from where you live to buy any investment properties, then, you know, one part is probably better than the other part, because if you've got family, you probably don't want to expend too much time and energy managing the properties, and you want to keep things, you know, nice and small. There's always a strategy for that. So that's that in a nutshell. That's to just cover off the basics. And I think once you answer these questions, then you would sort of know what direction you're headed in. There's a couple of other things that you could tag along to that, but I don't class that as being as important. Another thing being, for example, what your financial circumstances. So do you have, are you able to raise funds elsewhere, or you know, are you putting all your eggs into property? Because if you are putting all your eggs into property, then essentially speaking, you want to work the properties as hard as you can, if that makes any sense. So to start things, I'll start with a HMO. A HMO means housing multiple occupation. So before you do that, I think there's a number of things you kind of need to bear in mind. Where are you in the property journey? Do you own your own property? Because let's say if you don't, you might find it more difficult to, you know, get a HMO mortgage. Because obviously a HMO mortgage is completely different from a standard buy-to-let mortgage. Bear that in mind, because there's a lot of people that would go and do a standard buy-to-let mortgage and then try and HMO it, and sometimes it tends to cause problems in future. And part of the reason why you might be thinking, oh, hold on, what does owning a house have to do with anything? Some lenders want you to have home ownership behind you, at least for 6 months prior to you actually going out to get that sort of HMO mortgage, or even a buy-to-let mortgage in general. That's number one. Some lenders take it a step further, because a HMO is, I guess, more high risk than a standard buy-to-let, just because there's so many different moving parts. So some lenders take it a step further and they want you to have landlord experience before actually diving into HMOs, because they see that as being a bit more not difficult, but a bit more difficult, essentially speaking. So that's that. But now to get into a HMO, I think you just got to ask yourself a bunch of questions, like, you know, do you want an easy life from properties? You know, that's the first sort of question, because, you know, a HMO, it's a lot of managing that goes into it. If you think about it, you know, some landlords are very smart about the way they structure their HMO sort of portfolio and properties. So they would have a HMO all rented together to a group of students or to a group of young professionals. So, you know, it's all one rent, but it's all still individual sort of tenancy agreements. And in that case, your tenancy stays on the same cycle. But then more times than not, what happens is your tenancy is on different cycles. You're renting to one person, and then one person, and then one person, and then one person, and then what sort of happens when one person leaves? Now you got you got a gap in tenancy you got to fill, and it's a lot of moving parts. So that's one thing to bear in mind. Like I said, how much work would you have a stomach for it? Because HMOs can be quite daunting, and that's sort of one of the things. But so going over to the positive, HMOs tend to be more profitable than standard single lets if you do it right. But it comes with a clause. The clause being to actually get a property HMO ready and officially and legally speaking, can be quite costly. An example being a HMO license can cost you anywhere from £600 to £1,000, and there's a whole bunch of different rules about it, which I'm not going to bore you with in this video. I'm just trying to give you sort of basics so that you can sort of make your mind up in terms of what you want to do. But like HMOs, like you got the room sizes, you got like fire safeties and all of that sort of stuff, and so it can get quite daunting. And then you've got to sort of work out the management sort of side of things. Are you going to self-manage? Which I wouldn't even recommend, because that's just a bloody headache. Where are you going to bloody advertise it? What, not YouTube, Gumtree and stuff. But then if you give it to an estate agent to manage, you find out that the fees on HMOs are dearer than a single let. A single let you could get managed for anywhere from sort of 9 to 11%. A HMO, you're probably looking at like 12 to 15% quite easily. Maybe some more expensive estate agents may even charge you more. So that's that with HMOs. HMOs are beautiful. It's a way of stretching or making your property go further in terms of the financial benefits from the property, but it can be a lot of work as well. It can be a lot of work, and for a first timer, it can be quite discouraging. Just seeing it from the other end. For a first timer, it can be quite discouraging if you go into it and a lot of things go wrong in terms of that sort of HMO deal. But in a nutshell, if let's say you're earning £2,000 now and you're trying to, if your question is, what is the quickest way within my sort of reach that I can make or replace my earned salary of £2,000-3,000 a month with property, then I'd definitely say a HMO. Definitely say a HMO. But be very careful, because I see people doing HMOs with like 4 bedrooms. 4 bedrooms is okay, but generally speaking, I would say sort of like 5 bedrooms and up. To get a solid sort of income from HMO, I'd definitely say 5 bedrooms and up. Because what you find is with the 4 bedrooms, if you then calculate the difference you're earning between the HMO sort of pot versus a single let, if you rented the whole house as one, it's not huge. Or 3 beds HMO or 4 bed, it's not huge, So an example being a single let might go for 600. A HMO might go for, if you add it all in, maybe £1,000. But now, have you taken in the cost of getting a place HMO ready? Your application fee, like I said, £600 to £1,000. Management fee as well. By the time you take it all in, you're probably netting on the other one, after like servicing your mortgages and stuff. On a single let, you may be netting, let's say, 300. On a HMO, you may be netting maybe 500. So you see that, I mean, in percentages, quite a big difference. Is about maybe 70-80%, but in terms of the actual numerical value, it's not huge. But it's all down to what you want for your portfolio. Me personally, because I have a lot of things going outside of properties, I try to have an easy life with properties, so I'm not overly focused on working my properties as hard as I can. I'm more focused on making sure my debt is serviced and at least having some chance for capital appreciation. But maybe in future, I might be doing a lot more HMOs, who knows? But at the moment, I like the sort of peace of mind that single lets give me. So that takes us into single lets. As you probably gathered, it's the opposite of HMOs. Single lets are a lot easier to manage. You can even self-manage yourself, whereas a HMO, you'd struggle to self-manage yourself. Is there a right or wrong between a HMO and a single let? In my opinion, I would probably say for a first timer with little sort of property knowledge, you're probably better off dipping your toes in a single let property and then subsequently a HMO, because the HMO is a very fast way to build, you know, your coins up in the property game. 100%. Like, there's no arguments about that if you get it right. But I think a single let sort of introduces you calmly into the property game without you feeling overwhelmed and stuff like that. So now, moving on to the other part of that point, right? So when I look at like sort of like my property journey and like my intentions with property, I just think, right, there's two things that I want from properties, right? I'm greedy, so I want to hold a huge amount of wealth in property. You know, like in 10 years, you're saying, oh, I've got 30 million in properties, 20 million in properties, that sort of stuff. Who knows, maybe even more. But also a huge amount of income. Oh, I'm earning $1 million a year. I'm earning 2.5 million a year from just the property game. Like, that would be a sight to behold, right? So my whole thing, if we sort of finalize between HMOs and single lets, is my whole thing is I'd rather just go single lets with very strong rental yields and with very good capital appreciation, because then it leads me to that goal, that end goal, and then it gives me the opportunity, which HMO does as well, to be honest, because you get that extra income. It gives me the opportunity to have maybe a shorter sort of mortgage term, pay off my debt early, and then essentially speaking have that asset as a cash generating asset with, you know, no sort of debts or mortgage payments attached to it. So that's that. But the reason why sometimes I steer away from HMOs is, rather than HMOs, I just rather go fully into flats. So I'd rather buy an apartment block, or a block of flats. You know, if you go up north, they can be quite cheap. There was one that I looked at, I think towards the end of last year, was 7 bedrooms. It was in across Liverpool. I think, what was it's called? CH postcode. Some of you may know where I'm talking about. But it was what was it? It was like 275, a 7-bedroom apartment. You may have had to put in like 50 to 75 grand, sort of like ripping it down and getting it up to standards, and obviously depending on what the ceiling in that area is. But rather than HMOs, I'd rather go into that, because I feel like that's, for me, the real next level in terms of the property game. But that's not to say that I wouldn't add a HMO if it makes absolute sense. Like, there are some HMO deals that you come across and you just think, oh, this is too good to pass on. Those sorts of deals I would get onto. Now, moving on from that, what else could you sort of consider? You could consider sort of flips, and this would be more applicable to you if you don't have the best way of raising a lump sum for making your purchases. I know you could do BRRs, but you know, you kind of have to know what you're doing to be able to do BRRs. And it's very easy to lose money in it as well. For those of you that don't know, BRRs are buy, rehab, refinance, and rent. It's a place where it's a strategy where you basically buy houses that are slightly run down, generally looking at cosmetic work. You do the cosmetic work, get a new appraisal for it at a higher value, take out a new finance off the higher value, 75 LTV on the higher value, and pay off the sort of old property, or old sort of loan on that property. Well, the problem is, you know, you can't. You as a first timer into the market without any guidance, you would struggle to do that. However, flips are a great way to accumulate wealth or accumulate deposits, and then be in a more sort of financially viable position to just go in and buy more properties. So flips is literally that. You find a property that needs a bit of work, you find out what the after sort of repair value is, and you get the work done for as cheap as possible, but to the right standard within that sort of area, or within that sort of ceiling, ceiling in terms of price. And then you put it back on the market, you make the sale, you take your profit. Let's say your profit is 20,000 or 30,000. Let's say 30,000. You pay your taxes on that, whatever your tax bracket is. Let's say your tax bracket is 20%, so you pay £6,000 on 30 grand, and then 24 grand comes back to you. You know, so don't take that as a financial advice or anything of that nature. Still consult with your accountant. So that's that in terms of a flip. So a flip is a great way. So now, if you said to me, "Oh, you know what? I've got 30,000 or I've got 40,000 to my name. That's all I have. I'm not working, maybe, or I might be leaving my job, or I might be losing my job, and I can't raise another 40,000. Like, you know, this is it. And I want to get into property." I'll usually say to people, no, like, go do a business, make more money, and then get into property. Because property is an investment. It's not an income source initially anyways. But if you came to me with that and you were, you know, hell bent on getting into property, I would probably push you towards doing a flip. Because then that way you could sort of add to that sort of 40 grand that you have. You may add another 20 grand to it, which is 50%. If you're able to do that maybe 3-4 times throughout the year, bear in mind that there's a clause, usually like a 6 months clause. After you purchase the property, you can't sell it for another 6 months, generally speaking. So bear that in mind. But if you're able to do that a couple of times a year, you know, your investment pot grows, and now you're in a much better position. And now, the sort of final option, which I think it's great for a step up, but it's not great for a first timer. It's a serviced accommodation. So serviced accommodation, I guess, is still classed under a HMO, but for the purpose of this video, I'll talk about it separately. So serviced accommodation, in essence, you're running a hotel. You're running a small hotel. It is probably the most profitable sort of way of making money in property out of like the HMOs, the single lets. Forget the flip, because that's not renting. But out of the HMOs, the single lets, I think serviced accommodation is the creme de la creme in terms of making money on property. But there's a couple of things you need to bear in mind. Firstly, being it's quite capital intensive. So, you know, being able to, like, let's say, take a 4-bedroom Victorian house, for example, strip it down or maybe a Georgian house actually, so strip it down and then rebuild it into a 8-bedroom ensuite sort of bedrooms. You know, it's quite capital intensive, but when you get it right, it is beautiful. So some of you might have remembered watching a video that I made a while back of a partner that had who has a 10-bedroom serviced accommodation, all en suite in Liverpool, and I think, stupid numbers, honestly, stupid numbers. The rooms are renting for like £30 to £50. So you do the numbers on that. So even on a half occupancy, for example, you do the numbers on that. Huge numbers. And is that the way to go for a first timer? No. But is that something that you could flip into eventually in future? 100%. And to sort of finalize the video, just to make sure that I've given you guys an answer, I think the right way to go is a balanced portfolio. So a portfolio that has a bit of everything. So I make a lot of money buying land, but why am I not just buying only land? Why am I also buying properties and looking at even other countries and you know, other places other than just the UK, Ghana and Nigeria? That's because you want a diverse portfolio. And I think that's probably the key. So, you know, what I would say, or maybe start easy depending on your stomach. You may start with a single let, but more than likely consider other options as well, and keep an open mind with the property game in general. If you need any help, drop me an email, contact@JVceo.com. And thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Informative, but just bam, 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 all up in your face. Have a good weekend or week whenever you're watching this. Until next time.